Alright, I've got four movies to talk about in this video. Three of them are what I would consider classic film noir, and then one of them, the last one I'm going to talk about, is a more modern film, a neo-noir. But they all revolve around a theme of hiding from your past. The first movie I want to talk about isn't one that I own, it's one I saw on Netflix Instant Watch called House on Telegraph Hill, directed by Robert Wise, who's done a lot of great movies. Look up his filmography if you're unfamiliar with him. But House on Telegraph Hill stars Richard Basehart and I had to look up her name, Valentina Cortese. And basically, Valentina Cortese plays this woman who, during World War II, she's in a concentration camp. And right off the bat, I found that interesting. You don't see a lot of older films really addressing the Holocaust or concentration camps explicitly, and there are scenes in the beginning in concentration camps, and basically we see that she has been taking care of another woman at the camp who seems to be ill. She's sneaking her food, things like that. Another woman in the camp accuses her of doing it only because she knows that that woman is rich and can take care of her after all of this is over. Now, she does have knowledge that not only is this woman rich, but she had sent her young son to America to live with rich relatives as the war was breaking out. And that's important because that woman who was sick dies, and World War II ends, and the Allies are trying to, place a lot of these survivors, get them back to a normal life. And Cortese's character, you can tell that she's, shell-shocked. She's been through obviously traumatic events. Europe is still in ruins. And she decides to lie and say that she is this woman who that she had taken care of. Now, because of that, that means she gets sent to the U.S. to be reunited with her son, who isn't really her son. And it's one of those things where it's, right off the bat, it's a character who's in that gray area morally. You understand why she's doing what she's doing, but you also understand that it's, not necessarily the right thing to do. Yet you understand why she's doing it. Now, when she finally gets hooked up with, where her son is, she finds out that the relative he had been staying with had passed away, and basically the family's lawyer is kind of keeper of the estate and has been taking care of the little kid along with a nanny, a live-in nanny. And they seem a little suspicious of her at first, but since no one knows what she looks like and the son was too young to remember her, she's eventually accepted, and the family lawyer starts whining and dining her. Eventually they get married. And up until this point, as I was watching it, I was like, this is a good movie, but it's more of a melodrama than a film noir. But that's after the marriage, that's when things take a film noir kind of twist. Because to me, and this is probably just my personal definition of a film noir, but a film noir to me has to have some type of criminal element to it. She starts to discover that there are things to lead her to believe that the family lawyer, who she's now married to, had been trying to kill the little boy until she came along. And that could be because the little boy is the heir to the fortune and the only known survivor of the family, and evidently with him out of the picture, the money would have gone to the family lawyer or something. But anyway, so she starts to suspect that, and then starts to suspect that he's trying to kill her. And she works this out with a guy who's a friend of the family who she had met back in Europe, who was a U.S. soldier. She meets up with him again in the U.S., and of course, there's a little bit of a love interest there. But it's a really cool movie, again, exploring kind of those gray areas. And it's on, again, Netflix Instant Watch. Check it out if you've never seen it. Really good movie. The next movie I want to talk about is one of my favorite film noirs that I've seen up until this point. I've seen quite a few, but I still have tons of film noirs that I have not seen yet. But this one is up there. I would say it's probably in my top 5. And maybe at some point I will do a list. But I want to get some more film noir movies under my belt before I actually go through and kind of nail down a list of top 10 or something like that. But this one is Act of Violence. I own it on this great double feature DVD set. But Act of Violence is the one I want to talk about here because it also has not only that theme of hiding from your past, but it has a World War II connection, kind of like House on Telegraph Hill. Now this one is directed by Fred Zinnemann. Yeah, wanted to make sure that was right. Yep. And stars Van Heflin and one of my favorite actors, Robert Ryan. And in this movie, Van Heflin is established at the beginning to seem like he has a perfect life. He's got a successful career, a beautiful wife, beautiful home. But all that comes crashing down as Robert Ryan shows up. Robert Ryan is basically hunting Van Heflin down to kill him. He makes no bones about it. He wants to find Van Heflin and he wants to kill him. When Van Heflin hears the name of the person looking for him, which is Robert Ryan, we can tell that he knows who this guy is. But the mystery for us is figuring out what the connection is. We have no idea. His wife has no idea. He has been hiding something from his wife. There's a great scene early on where he and his wife are cowering in the kitchen as Robert Ryan is walking around the house kind of hunting for him. Robert Ryan has a bad leg, so he drags it behind him, and there's no dialogue. It's just the sound of that scraping leg as he's kind of circling the house, and we see him pass by windows and things like that. It's a really cool, creepy scene. But as the movie unfolds, we find out that they were in World War II together, and I'm not going to give it away, but when you find out why Robert Ryan is hunting Van Heflin down, it's one of those things where you're, again, another gray area of you understand why Robert Ryan's doing what he's doing, even if you don't agree with it. And sometimes those are the best movies. This whole life that Van Heflin has, this seemingly perfect life, basically comes crumbling down because of all this. Because he has to go in hiding, and when he goes into hiding, he goes into this seedy underworld. He stays with this prostitute played by Mary Astor. It's a great character. And she hooks him up with a hitman because Van Heflin figures the only way out of this is to hire a hitman to kill Robert Ryan. It's just a great movie. So check it out if you haven't seen it. Act of Violence. Really good movie. Now, you can't talk about film noirs without talking about this next movie because it's considered one of the best film noirs of all time, but it also happens to fit this theme that I'm talking about of characters hiding from their past. And this movie, Out of the Past, directed by Jacques Tourneur. It's a French name. I'm sure I'm butchering it, but he's a great director as well. He's somebody you want to look up his filmography as well. He did a lot of stuff that had some great black and white photography, and they always had dark themes to them. And Out of the Past is, like I said, one of the best film noirs of all time. If you ever look at any lists, that's always on like the top 10. Starring Robert Mitchum, Kirk Douglas, who else? Jane Greer, and like I said, directed by Jacques Tourneur. And in this movie, Robert Mitchum is a guy that we see in the beginning who's, again, kind of like an Act of Violence, seems to have this nice little life in a quiet little town. He owns a gas station. But he gets pulled into the world of his past when somebody shows up looking for him. And as it turns out, he had been a private investigator, and as we see in a flashback, he had been hired by Kirk Douglas to do some work for him. And I'm not going to go into the plot too much, but it involves twists and turns. Of course, there's a woman involved, and there's backstabbing. Is she with him or is she against him? We don't know. And then when you catch back up to the present, the story continues with Kirk Douglas trying to make another deal with him. And again, as with a lot of these movies, especially movies dealing with detectives or private investigators, the initial case, quote, case, is never as what it seems. And that's the case here. But again, it's a great movie. It's got a lot of cool stuff. You get to see somebody fish hooked by a fishing hook. If you like that kind of thing. Of course, one of the famous quotes from this movie is "Build my gallows high, baby," is a quote from Robert Mitchum's character. It's one of those film noirs that's known for some great dialogue. So yeah, check that out. Out of the Past, Robert Mitchum, Jane Greer, Kirk Douglas. And then the final film I want to talk about, I always like to try to include a modern film or a more modern film that touches on some of the same themes as these classic film noirs, because I like kind of connecting those dots. And for me, that movie that fits this theme is History of Violence. If you haven't seen this movie, I think it's a great movie. It made a lot of top 10 lists the year it came out. I do know some people that don't like this movie, including some friends of mine who I was told made fun of this movie as they watched it, but I'll stay friends with them anyway. So basically with this, we have Viggo Mortensen again. He seems to be living this nice little life in a quiet little town. It's got a diner he runs. Similarities here to Out of the Past. Having his own little business in this quiet little town. But in this case, Viggo Mortensen is confronted in the beginning by some sick killers that we see in the beginning doing some awful things, and he ends up killing these guys and becoming a town hero. But because of the press from that, some people from his past catch up to him, and his family starts to discover that he had a life before them with organized crime, and that's when he gets pulled back into that world, and he's got to clear things up so he can get back to his regular life, and that includes confronting William Hurt, who chews a lot of scenery in this movie. Again, it's a movie I like quite a bit, and that's History of Violence, directed by David Cronenberg, who, for me, he's a very consistent director. Doesn't mean all his movies are the same by any means, but I like pretty much every Cronenberg movie I've seen, but I haven't seen them all. History of Violence, based on a graphic novel, but again, the graphic novel, the movie, they seem to have the themes that I talked about from some of those classic film noirs, and I'm sure in some way the writer may have been inspired by some of those film noirs. But good movie, check it out, History of Violence. I'll try to keep these Film Noir Fridays going throughout the year, 2013. Can't promise it's going to happen every Friday, but I'll try to keep up with them regularly. If you have any suggestions of themes, I've already got a great YouTuber, Milady Mel, aka Barb, had sent me some stuff, including a theme that she'd like to see in one of these Film Noir Fridays, so I'm gearing up to do that one in the future, so stay tuned for that. But if you have any thoughts on these movies I've talked about, or any themes or types of film noirs you have questions about, or would like to see discussed, if you have any movies you'd like to recommend, again, I'm in no way an authority. I'm somebody who's discovering a lot of these film noirs and just kind of talking about them as I go. So keep the conversation going down below in the comments section, and thanks for watching.